facility, the geometries that now came glazed, casting...
So John Cage is an American composer, and this is his centenary year, marking 100 years of his birth. And the piece we've just made is a realisation of a score from 1979 called CIRCUS On, and it's a way of translating a book, it can be any book, into a piece of music which involves performance without actors or theatre. And the instructions for the score ask you to take a book and, through a process of reading through the text using a keyword which might be the author's name, create a series of poems called mesostics, where this keyword is a central column down the middle of the poem. So that's the first stage. And then from there you read through the book a few more times, making a note of all of the mentions of places and of sounds in the book, and then prepare recordings of all of those sounds and all of those places to create a sort of a soundscape that captures the audio aspect of the narrative. And then all of these are played together, organised partly using chance procedures, and then played with music which is representative of the book itself. So in this case we were using Angela Carter's Nights at the Circus, so we chose to use lots of circus music, so there's lots of Sousa marches and waltzes and things like that.
A voice that clanged dustbin lids, right here in smoky old London. The well unusual circumstances docked like Helen of Troy, while bow bells rang, vast blue and decorous eyes, poised or not. Then she spun around. It was a plush rehearsal, shooting up like a rocket. Unseen, Sir Giver, behind bums aloft, goes in a stereotopicus perspective, large enough, powerful. Evidently this one, notorious and much debated, stood away quilting, shuddering the surface they called me. English. Jerking her head, scrawled on, chilled magnum of hissing flute. European tour, gave her supper, she gave the railway a cheering, to the hotel displayed, to that of the Kaiser, psychoanalysis everywhere, she eclipsed the King of Portugal, egg-shaped peels, which all London lies beneath, Yokohama. She will then ship Democratic Union, which will coincide with the fag end of the 19th ashtray. To explode her. Though do not think her controversy another sniffer. From close quarters she would have to have said there was gin, invitingly shook hairs on your chest. Already chuckled with appreciation, a lavish hand let foam splutter to imagine grand vocal caressless. When you saw her, never think she dreamt of bank accounts jingling. Back on top, like the fluff laundry, persons unknown in the new straw, sweetly eggshells. She who clasped me at that hard and took me indoors unpacking me. All the girls like the little things that hitherto this woman beside the mirror, eyeing Jack, attempting dark brown voice. Double-barreled diphthongs, so indeed. Took a legal handle. Let's get your makeup, Lizzie. Might have been any sorrow. grey between, excavating a glass jar. She slapped it, splat on it. Waiting, waster scoring away, cotton wool. That French joke, red and gleaming, a drop behind, kind clanging, she submerged beneath another fistful of cold spite. The aftermath was no table. Charcoal toujours Toulouse. That part of herself, just a bunch, stuck in a jam jar from the mantelpiece. Such rugs, nothing to give her. Dressing room. Blonde hair striating on the dangling set of pink fleshings, first glance blooms into the great other. A nail at the ciliate fringes in her voluminous cape. She began to twist the perfunctory breathe of a stale night Alhambra. Cage whisked for a moment, flung off her mantle in pink fleshings, her prow ship. Bearing down, she might snap movement, sequins on her crotch, was hidden away under 18 Brazilian cockatoo, exhibited marvellous present too good to touch, twice as large. She rose up on spectators a comprehensive view of her superb, heavy, backwards gesture. Charlatan, an illusion and pit band ground a moment's disharmony. Could, at the Valkyries, of tuneless insensitivity of walls, inescapable of stage, and gave order to raise her elbows swing. To catch the dangling trapeze while upon the arching notebook, ruffled, placed her composture, but soon, quite soon, strenuous exercise going to pop. She hasn't ungainliness in flight. Why she doesn't tack a tail on, verisimilitude and what made rather the lack, even the climatic air at a cool, contrived theatre spectacle. Her Rubenesque from the music, did she dawdled. Because the projectile slackened in its speed along the invisible trapezes, with heels 3 times off the crack, surely pondered a trip and a somersault from this. Achieved in a different way, last approached the limitations, contemplate that disbelief, asking was impossible during her act, pink wings, grace. By one hand, the other, she jumped the stage squarely on, feet with bouquets. How beautiful wreathed in carnivorous kisses. Shivers, some chorus boy curtsies to the conductor, kissing her hand. This earthiest course gargantuan enthusiasm is still fragrance as she sang. She had a gullet also waited with the appetite of another queer spectacle. He remained. Feathers and the ceiling Nelson, rest her soul, on account of having Nelson, little wreath of pink, cotton roses, arrow. Your hand, tis you gilded gently, wreath of roses. The lady's eyebrows, wingled, reigning over a nostalgic smile behind the screen, yet strength above the company. If she were for 7 long years my apprenticeship, until the time came when woman bleeding started. Start of my public girlhood, and nothing but practice on the public glass. A bang and lotions jumped a cloud of powder, cat catching painfully feathers disregarded, her shift. Our little birds fly away, laughed for pure pleasure. Think, my little one, the century in which no woman and I designed on a grand scale. You could have let me indulge, sheltered me, dragging in the mud. It was scallop-shaped fanlight, the tide of fashion swept away. You almost cried. Behind the howling of the Radcliffe Hole, scrubbed and surrounded, always kept the white blinds. Say the sign, a scythe in one, midnight or noon, perpetually said the clock, the dead hour of vision, Nelson. All I believe it, poignant divide, that she messages the gods. Matching the palmer pupils, darkness, void also. The aerialist, one opened into plurality, the strongest possible trembling, as if he took a sip before she continued again. I stood upon the mantelpiece, then thinks, nothing. Upon the wall, cobwebs, but great white wings precipitated, mercy of gravity, unrunneled the dirty satin, stretched over the knees. I feared not any wise contingency denied, so her pleading knew that must be, and so. Hurtled precious, my invisible lover, the wind slowly affronted, and I, fearful, kicked up to keep tight, as if I were the longest, tip feathers increasingly confident, back together. The clasped tandem cut a corridor through there, drank thirstily, altogether steady, exile. Know the truth with piercing, judging regard. She could go. Brightly painted carnival ladies flickered through creaking and wheezing old night watchmen. Saw the light, won't be me, old duck. Shouted across the feathers and smiled as a star to tell the truth. Our heart's first flight found skill. Not neglect reached perfect ripeness. No person, me or think I was, the gin shop of the house. The roof, unused as wings began, an altogether different set, did not know comparative physiology. So I leaps up, the prince of hubris, scattering the cherries, comparing the eaves, up in perfect terror, grips her by the arms. That house, the end of cages, the dog who guarded all the cats newly given, of the pleasure, those sweet and loving of the sisterhood virtuoso, followed after poor girls that whores do it, so that they will feel foolish knocking on the door. My apprenticeship of others would harden inside this artificial egg sarcophagus of beauty, not have told you for the kiss of a magic prince. I saw how yet I was possessed, what it was round to him, tucked away, luxe calme evolute, imagined artistic or political coughed pursuits, and the study of aerodynamics. Earth or heaven, not for this legally entitled, already paid for a pebble to stand aside of the food spilled on the carpet. Time is vowed nothing, gained trunks immediately to leave, start their search for Annie, to pool office work. Those keys of her like a head of figures, accounts straight for things, and finding suitable premises have prospered to management, as for our best-hearted harlot. Talent, to put it all to beggars, too much Nelson's port. After the security, it's a telegraph boy, twanging wires, cropped anchor, muck interpolation, discretion. Packing in the parlour thoughtfully hid fireguard and humiliation and camaraderie that room released myself from Siberia. Feathers opened her notebook, rustled the lateness of shining whites. That dock do declare I tossed my knickers over this evening's show. Stretched voluminous drawer away from the fashion dock in the fingertips. Behind him, Victoria's sword thrust her hand into the bosom and brought it in the exhausted ways. I carried, I sent it. Shaw had noticed, replaced it after the fumes of few nostalgic ashes. What a long drive it was to Battersea. When we got there, rushing to push fresh coffee on, life did not come amiss, and we'd help out in the shop, Frank discreeted, shrouded in a shawl, Pokey Penny in a lump. I love to be among the little voices, lisping merry rhymes, innocent, and to sail after so many years, why each day, cream parlour, all this talking, it takes the strength. Peered beneath the napkin, nothing except dirty crockery. She said, I'll just slip out, jacket of grey, anonymous fur over her headdress, little black hat, still fresh as a daisy, as she ducked out of the door, alone with a giantess who fell silent, them alone together, stroked an eyebrow, imperative for her peace, perhaps, hoping their scent. She pulled her violets, dripping, buried her face in them, whatever virtue, she yawned. But not as a tired girl yawns, energy opening in a crimson mood. Basking shark, then she stretched every muscle as a cat does. Up all the mirror, Walzer confronted. Felt faint in her huge arms, convulsed him. Champagne scattering underwear, glazing. Mantelpiece, ma'am, the call of nature. One moment was allowed, choking with essence of feathers. Room until she were done with him. Direct the brown arc, engaging in this earth again, for there is no element about pissing. Fly earth's sizzled with a salt. Holding the brown teapot, appeared the screen. An unpenned bath water and the scum deposit of tea leaves behind the screen. Draft freshened up. Running water and the chink of reassurance on the soundless slant. Mauve and orange flames, Big Ben striking. Walzer relapsed on the sofa, silken earthings, pamphlets, and newspapers. Apologies he bundled together. Lazy, chattering with rage, always in the corner, but feathers ducked with relish, smacking of plump black tea. Everything aggressively normal. Put fresh heart into the aerialist. A hop and a skip and a jump. From the old Vink, prizes were perched up in yellow stockings. We dearly loved the bars. Marriage of figure, hearty laughter, irritation. As for me, Carmen due to the spirit bombardment. Challenge and attack. So there we are. Cold winter came on. Gianni's chest got very bad, with the trade going so bad, hard to put to manage. He was all crazed out on business in the freezing November. Towards him, in their bodies, a gloomy pile of Kensington melancholy, leafless trees, as if the very stucco were in portico over the front door, tightly barred, with no mouth, poor thing, never saw eyes so full of sorrow and of abandonment. Save yourself where there is yet time, the same poor creature of necessity. Early as it was, Madame Schreck, it seems, awake, but still in bed, have a cup with her. My trepidation worn me out, and I was starving. Nightlight or corpse light. I was hard put. There is my cup, embroidered hangings. Make out the face to see you, Toussaint. After which she set it beside her bed and my chair, a safe the size of a roll top, locked up. I can tell you with the tenderest gesture. It contains to her skinny bosom most vehement display of liking to get head on any hard, flat pillow, and sleep to wake hours later. Barest flame chest chamber and iron bars. A few lights in happy homes. I might never leave this place, now I have come here for the sake of money, at this apocalyptic moment. The shadow behind a kerosene lamp. Fanny, love, don't be afeard. Who worked for nature such as I, and the Wiltshire wonder, and Albertina, half and half, and neither. During the time, I was the full complement. Toussaint was a drunk cook. So much of her, this Toussaint. Teeth through a tube up his nose, sufficient to sustain life, frequent the company. I was able, successfully operated, for all account, was a true man of silence. Entertained the curiosity of surgeons for 3 hours and discussed navigations in birds, meeting so great wealth, dared to be rude over personal experience. Lizzie, how can he move, or if all of those with fresh, crackling vigour, as it were, opened the aperture of speech, that it had a look of such glazing fury. Suddenly, as she had started before he had a chance to ask, before he met, used to work the herring pond, connoisseur of degradation, sovereigns to poke, who were the unnatural ones. His natural is cast, tap with your fingers, but the man who came, all quite remarkable, their faces suggest, did not have his mind, could hear encouraging words. On the pad he always carried comfort and an inspiration organised her museum in what used to be a wine cellar. Wormy beyonds overhead, damp flagstones underfoot. The girls was all made in stone niches. The sleeping beauty was a speciality. In front of her curtains, profane altars, Toussaint would unbolt in the little receiving room, clobbering the big wardrobe, or a ballet dancer's frock. I liked least come regular for the privilege, but on the black cap himself off upstairs, black theatre round his neck, he'd ejaculate and give charge of that when the client had lights dimmed. His place at the harmonium started pumping out some hardening tune. To off with the shawls, the game's busy, climb up on our pedestals. Tottering down the cellar, ushering the happy client, clanking of chains, but further skull. London train had done before, gained some difference, gathered her dreaming body. She would have been pretty as a picture, emaciated and female flow, slept, but her hair with a loving heart, toenails wonders stars to trim, dexterity of her tiny fingers, because the Sleeping Beauty's eyes were specially prominent, dark as the underskins of mushrooms, very heavy. When she opened her little windows, the feeble strength that every time it might be the last time that the vast ocean of sleep, which she drifted so far. It was at the Sleeping Beauty long enough to take, as she would evacuate the bedpan Fanny held under her. Her eyeballs moved continually as if she were watching shapes on the sides of her eyelids, convulsing twitch softly, cry out. Most strange. And once, when Fanny and I, one night, when, though so diminutive, perfectly formed little confidant Anne Gibson, or the beautiful Anastasia, a small man himself, most accomplished dancer, good living, she replies, horrid, nasty, hairy things protected from the dark, amongst the monsters, well hidden, a merry milkmaid, better than a prank, round and though overgrown, hollow since it was burrowed. I, like runs of generations, like a gigantic tomb, who lived in Wiltshire, laid out their dead, steered clear of it, place accursed might suffer curious fates. But my madcap mother, better a silver sixpence, there once spent this earthen castle, honey, and a farthing tip, heart, being the coffin, to eat her supper, so she was in the dark. Time passed, and letting down growing up that lay ahead, I'd never grown up. Danger lay ahead, a way and preferred book of maturity longed. Tinselland told me I loved my family, that unalterable difference, the clumsiness of their limbs, the thunder of their voices, in all my life the monstrous ugliness in that kind house of the beasts from natural kin, and put on the show in the eye of a wise bird, always a wicked girl in the crush. At the end of the show, past its garden, some cruel comic hand pasted 7 tiny stars. Handsomest young he was, to your eyes. He cried with her hands, wept bitterly, recovered, although they were penniless. Berlin, and how I came under circumstances I relate to night when I close my eyes, eternally of fearful memories, and see for myself their fantastic lust, and I could ever be this lovely creature she could never climb out. How I envy that poor being, Sleeping Beauty, plain-spoken, hearty lass, in the street and the spring of the health. Pulled back the curtain, Shrek could say, take off her blindfold, pull up her shift, where she would have nipples. Look at him properly, not big, but very bright. What did she see? Why, same as with the top, free open disposition, saw too much of the world, come to rest, whom there was no earthly use, this rag and bone. Seeing funny her bosom to spoon-coddled egg, said, why don't you marry? Once you've got over the shock, the world, those children, placid as you please, nourish a baby on salt tears. $50 guineas to you. Keeping up, I grabs hold of her chair and gives her a faint rattle. Take your hands off me. Pull the other, madam, bloody, I insist. You've paid me nothing and kept me here. Shook her again, that makes 2. Opens the safe. Under her pillow, in her black rags, head turns from side to side. Rat hole to slip down, can't escape me. Opportunity to shed my trembling fingers. Showed us again until my head knocked plaster and left her there, kicking her little arms about it. From a position of strength, how much did he really put down in advance? For I am an honest girl, is mine by rights, on her bed, counting out the shiner's muffling creep. It was that trapped me. Star anonymity amongst the chivalry, centuries at the top of the bill with the aid of mechanical contrivances. To milk the children, she might be dropped, even when favours turned, with her gift of poisoned pies resentfully dozen upon dozen of them. In full measure imperial, knew for the wire how great the art, 100 pounds and stands no higher than 5 inches on the ground. God, as she hurtles through the air, 60 miles in her stockinged feet, roof tree in the imperial circus. Swimming movements through the air, drawn to the ring like a moth to a flame. As he had yet could not, since this convincing others and convinced her modest judgment. Spectacle of the Valkyries. Petticoat and chemise stained, wipings of her hands. Grandmother piled up in soft curls, pink satin robes romantic, well, as if to let a caged bird within them. Second verse, leader in the tiger. Bass act, wasted on the hoi polloi, remonstrated feathers, Waltz's eye prickled, although he knew this time the music was much to blame as she. Scattered of applause, an aggressive silence, apprehensions, for he held great store by singing. Her accompanist, he strove to recall the Swedish nightingale to the great American. With this, what else? The biggest tiger on his pedestal curtsied, tail twitched and tingled, princess gave out from his perch, out of respect for the tall beast. But that's the cat tried to eat me, so you've been introduced to strongmen. A vision of gleaming muscle, Waltzer covered her eyes with one hand and raised the bottle to her lips. Waltzer, dancing man, the temple quickened, resolving, blurred, until that single bar itself dissolved the limitless landscape of the dance. The applause was tumultuous, sulking. You saw all the groom's name, every single clown, all drawn to her little legs. The tigress knocked him backwards with her rumblings, evil-smelling purr, and the two girls clung together. A moment longer than the propriety allowed. The ovation, whom then the princess snapped, cat slept and disappeared. The enchantment was over. The colonel was August. He had himself selected chicken and tigers, a gigolo. The aerialist wears a double set of honours, strong in the gamey tranquility of the menagerie, until Waltzer passed through the way, knocking him down on the elemental indifference of the wig. It was Fevers who flourished the rescued Waltzer, once disturbingly masculine, out of the cat house and the sound of the liquefying misery her tiger's skin she removed, disclosing itself before agonizing her delirious notion on him. Bottles of straw freshly opened, mignon baldriss hung from a bar, marked Hotel de l'Europe, surprised at a game. Although her underthings were broderie and glaze, his curly head in her arms, Waltzer was aggrieved, discovering untapped areas of competence, snatched up beginnings of a monstrous black eye. He says he loves you. A black face laughed, the strong man wept. He says he loves you, mumble, mumble. He says he loves you, he's a coward, a clown, dragging, bumping, making heavy weather of it, conscious of the smile of his insensible features. Old duck, you go and give that hairy fellow a hand. The strong man rose, round, trotting along some remark in German, another in French, but they did not smile. Clasped at last, along with me, lovebirds together, hand in hand, the tigers slept, so much the better. Cherish the bars they kept in from the musical lovers to found unconscious. In the courtyard, the second marking, after tetchy display of contrition, drew him into the alley. He made it apparent he wished to hail a cab. The colonel proposed that night. He did not give me vocal cords. Monsieur, the business of the educated apes. All expenses. Well, here's a Toto. And corking a fresh bottle with his teeth. Professor, people think you're a bunch of high school kids in monkey suits. Tongue in your head, you know what I say, with a grunt Sybil spilled out the alphabet cards. Cheap at the price, with mighty hard doubts of her integrity, the dumb beasts bond where I come from. I reluctantly contract, much vexed pork and beans. She jumped back upon her cushion. Further discussion might have concluded his shave with equanimity, enlisted, obtaining, to wash down the jellied carb. While nervous fingers, screamed to finish, primed for the occasion, offered her a good night. Chilled champagne lapsed into slumber, silk reproachfully, drawing the scent of hothouse flowers dripping from a candle, spangled the brocade curtain. A frozen little crescent moon sighed. A trick hatched out as if eggs cost nothing but shell. You're a devil for a pretty face. Not his face. A rap on the door, I interrupted her. Precious, lucky, unknown. She tossed it into the fire. He had cerements stained with dung, brick and rock, cocked a fresh hat, puckered up his rouge lips, pouted like a young girl. And once the great clown's direction provided for such astonishment, and also the entrepreneur floated an invisible halo of doors, lurching the work of a moment, disarticulated, the clown with lavish gestures rearing a buckling way, as if he couldn't bear the stop while his shrill voice stuttered. Stand in such thwarted fury, section of high stepping. A Yahoo dwelled therein to the clown's last cue. When it was time for the Feast of Fools, clown's Christmas, sufficient to proceed round the table. The audience took time to catch its breath. He saw with his hands and spoke no English, scream at his heels, make-up threatened to dislodge his knife, and flourished it. Tit floated, provoked like a buffo. Buffo collapsed, wrestling, bravado of Jacob, harmless, a crashing thwack of his palm thereon. Walzer links upon a silver platter. Grick. Grab for the carvers, if you get a chance. Why is that? Demanded Walzer. Into between writhing horrors, turbulent tranquility. The weird company surrounded him, warned him, crow. The loving father about his children. As the band broke, banging and rattling, clutching on at heat, while he came to. You're on next. Then on wait for the interval, like a baby. Feathers shut the window. The relentless agility did not drown the baying of the crowd. She said, ain't seen nothing like me before. Top-notch beard. Reflected in the mirror, they demanded. She said, flung the feather cloak over her shoulders. The bonus for this, the sire, a filthy mood. She won't take a word of advice while she recovered. The cockney Sybil, water over chocolate, protested from his eyes. Cage drifted over from the slaughter and so on. Wazer, a note tucked into his hand, adjuring him to make all haste with him. The sudden sting of jealousy that struck alone would, out of letter, so anxious to dispatch the feathers. Incandescent with applause, she snapped. Not the way you do, darkly, fucking makeup. Forward gone. Train leaves at midnight, she cast a meaningful glance at the stopped clock. Shh. You've go together. That's what it is. What harm can not match tonight? To cramp my style, you grouched towards the mirror, deposited a kiss on her. Watch it! Chuck a hand grenade at the poor fellow. Myself, I prefer finesse. With a conjurer's flourish, she made some fences passes. I go armed into combat, leave my weapon all reached out to test, to go. Black besides, flushed and resplendescent with snatch victory, the madman and the carnivore by the presence eat at the courtyard gate. Behind the melancholy, the white sheepskin hats, bought in the markets, cardboard trunks, agitated, showing the colonel. The professor, terribly angry, he shrieked and gibbered, and the tone at one shaking with sealing wax at a clause in the margin. Knocked off work. The colonel crumpled his paper into a ball with a bust of ironic cheering and scattered applause. Always wasted on something, home, something to make each passerby smile. Wealth had come, conversely, palace poverty, the best of the things, Feathers noticed, since sometimes a symbolic means freely made, the kind spectacle people pay good money to see, earn your living, good for nothing. In the marketplace, engaged in productive labour, neither the sums he is about to squander have nothing to do with a woman in the world. To pay at ducks and drakes. My value to him is in his marble halls. She stalked up an outflung car. Attentively behind her, his eyes fixed on the base of her shoulders, the candle holder, an auctioneer, asked to provide. A steep side mezzanine, little glasses for vodka, funnels for champagne, life-size. And smiling, a cold masterpiece of ice, sculpture in a black gravel of caviar. Rainbow facets of the most significant. She had ever seen itched to snatch it, make off with it. Could she? A sulk might be drawing something. Seas giving her a sensation of hot melt sculpture. Her hand, the trace of saliva, greeting. He had cut infinite and barren catching. His thought was astonishment. He offered her vodka. Did he intend to ask? He arranged the glasses into a series of Roman letters, slitted the names of her name. But how? Walking, feeling, giving. Then he is 35 and still could have wished. No, I am a great collector of marvels and natural artifacts. He winked at her. Often, as I've imagined, he pressed the nether spines all forward out of the dark cavity into the place with a soft thud, constructed of precious metals which he sees in the very shape of a bird, of a coat of feathers, dark, winy, topazy colours, eyes of red gemstones. There was a hollow woman, nothing in between the breasts except arms extended in a supplicatory gesture that operated a last wound in beautiful fingers and fingernails, all complete, unnerving bronze. The Grand Duke surveyed his clockwork orchestra with a satisfied air, china for himself. A grandfather clock could put that harpy together. The airs on her nape rose, and I intended her to be afraid of him. She refused champagne. Another drip fell from the nose of the caviar dish with a plink. Her diamond had melted. The Grand Duke gave her his arm. Come to inspect the rest of my collection. That moment, the weird geometry of the inhuman music deformed the angles of the lined world. Each glass case wonderful. Soon. After, no. Grand at once, every light in the palace went out. Only artificial ice dripped off her own effigy. She heard her nose melt. She felt faint. She said, "Fivers, justice, permission to run." Beneath her, he sighed perhaps with pleasure, and stared to agitate the plumage rustling under the red satin. Squeak, twang, bang. A simple egg, waiting for a spoon to tap it. Unexpectedly, he left off his fumbling for a moment, noticing how she bet herself. Tongue fell apart into worms. Wide agate overlaid the center. But she did not go. One is for you, gold, putative, a cage made out of gold wires, a little perch of rubies and of diamonds, feathers with oriental inscrutability, the geometries that now came glazed, casting the necklace, the bitter knowledge, feathers, ran helter-skelter down the platform, the pig, the weeping girl, the dark abyss of the night. This abyss, slowly, began to pull its great length, its freight of dreams, and a burst of boyish protest came. Protesting, sorry, cold, outside, inside, cold. Now pick yourself up and run straight home to Granny. What am I supposed to be? Snap my bed at night. Another you should go. Oh, have the ones you really flirt with, leaving broke. She knows how to hurt. That's Liz's style. Broke your mascot once and for a life. Then locking wheels clicked and groaned, even on. Like gingerbread mocking the wilderness, nothing but streaks of snow, nothing through the vastness of nothing. Sometimes in the sudden, almost supernatural silence. The rumble of a tiger's roar, the tuskers, the tiger, the track, waffles, a paper cone of berries, sour milk in a bottle, your own cut glass water flask. Never venture here where the wild things are. At her cards, not for the shrinkings, and clocks running ahead of behind. Logic that won't be meddled with. The key of light, she won't let me touch it. Never deviate. Unacknowledged. This inimical terrain, foster travel. They pushed, could think, her knees. Her muscular hands clenched, grinding through weeks, a month, a year. The princess produced from it a Bach fugue. Sullen foster child, feathers handbag, her toenails, a squalid spectacle, a hair. Already clipped, grizzled, bubbly. Hasn't cried since Nelson's funeral. Anguish that I felt, this anguish. The waiter watched, the napkin round Sybil's neck. Pigs. Man tastes same, long gaming. The notion of a veal cutlet in gravy, too bright a brown for authenticity. As for me, dispatched a look, Jack, he comes, reminds me of one unfinished. Beloved face known long ago and lost, although I never knew him. Still that face, so vague, absent, texture of devil's food. His young man felt her teeth close in his flesh to define the adventurer. Spoon chinked upon soup plate, cutlet upon the branches of the enfilades. About the contents of his contained generosity were bears in plenty. The shaman believed the bear in a silver cradle onto a thicket in his fetish satchel. Milk to the villagers manifested their choice in extraterrestrial means. With the bears he knew it was for the beast. Loin and buttock. Everyone else feasted on the celebrant's notice, the provider of himself. Messages to the dead, strength and valour, not precisely mortal. Didn't he taste good after the flesh was boiled and the good helped, with the extreme antiquity of what was future ignorance, shared with a shaman retrieved from the garbage? Bears could talk, his bear would strike. The margin shallow and another seeing and believing peoples in this region, a sort of magic realm for a journalist. Not that increasingly visited by memories, had he but known it, available rediscovery of his name. Sometimes then he acquired an inner life, a realm within himself. Useless to ask if a world beyond during the trances possessed an hereditary disposition in his familiarity with caressing this bear. There fixed on the whiteness a smudge of years yearning that moved not his eyes, but became again the belching smokestacks of the ships that set out from the four corners of the world. Could never believe, would never have taken an oar, could not interpret his vision. What the sea meant, the shaman's language grew, interpreting the dream. See a man, a little animal, the upper part of the lower part. Field trees, he brings food, but his visions the shaman understood delicious, almost as fond as the spirits named. But also be using the dream elk out of the remains of a female first cousin in a minor pastoral capacity. The elk hide surrounding the birth, her eldest were relatively rare. These days no birth had in fact taken place. Still away Saturn, song for the shaman. He carried on, raucous and discordant. Extraordinary things the spirits, with also rockets glare, bursting in air. But no, the flag was not there. Perfumed, hazy smoke in front of the fire, fixing for supper, and beast already present, a reek of a Paul's draw. Walls had put together the memory he did not know, the voices, so it might stem last. Do not run away with shaman. That series of walls are looking for the supreme form. Trick others. Own utter confidence in the midwife, negotiated, with which but an evil spirit causing his patience, and would continue to the spirits. Forms the shaman himself must equip. Then he could be seen seeing, hearing clearly and listened avidly. But whose ears were not as sharp was a prerequisite performance. Believing in the shaman's powers, by tradition, would have seemed distinctly perverse. The spirits forbid cultivation, of which labours is Samvar grew thunder of Walzer. Then he was of his bear, was Their exposure had not tempted the winter. God, the shaman, and his female hut took out enormous pendants of tin. The shaman up the tree, though the tree candles in the bow. Walzer, though that Christmas must remember what Christmas was, remain in ignorance. The 19th century could not even say they were exiles. Rather, they inhabited history into nothing. At this time, the cusp had a plebiscite. The inhabitants of the world, occupied as they were, of agriculture, of the lash, metaphysics dividing up years by popular consent. Yet those last bewildering days, that final little breathing space, knew more than them. So they were American, 92, smug, that because nothing had nothing ever would change. The Siberian tribespeople alone and their lives, this resilient mythology, the shamans as requesters, they were stars. The colonel would not have recognized traditional iconography solemnly, certainly, but the tinkling caper she sewed. Although they broke down, the shaman mixed pigments, lichens and berries, willow trees and horned mammals parts. Worms and men designed to travel at least bipedal, with vibrant red. The figure troubled and delighted, the bells and feathers for hours at a time, and tapped at the drum. He smiled in the dusky air, since already the late dawn of the winter did not manage, anticipating murk. His control might be sunshine brought when the shaman and Walzer were a fair number. But the cousins stayed after the birth, the evil direction of the sanctuary disquieted, after the style of the conductors dutifully applied lessons in looking solemn. All this inner perturbation was as fine as a day. Gone. The snow did not look like a cover that designed to keep another purple jingle from the small air. Some sixth sense. There came a voice raised in a song, such a voice you might time prematurely. The day came out. Largest shiver. To drink the miraculous fountain of song. Their feet like snowshoes, fauna and flora. In the Thracian mythology, suit their savage breast Schubert lead, with the scales made on flutes, fashioned from stone. The honeyed tones of the magic of a song. However, it drew towards its source the cacophony of unseasonably bright lips, pursed in query. Ways are found when dwelling in the clearing, swooning tigers, back a little, and curious tribespeople. However, he was accustomed at all, seeing the same round-eyed individuals from the direction containing fish. Felt he was getting round eyes made closer. Jack, Jack. She might have been mimicking, ceased on a discord. Silence now rang out, his name in the mouth, negotiating with imaginary things. Feet of elk, seen before the trade blankets, his apprenticeship's name, was still making that wet thud. Incompetence of the apparition scattered this disarray, who appeared seized by an ecstatic fit the shaman could mount, where it shrugged him.